All right, everybody, what's going on? How y'all doing? And welcome to today's edition of Swag Talk, the show we cover the swag inside and out. I am your tour guide around the swag Seawells coming at you. And it is the final week of the regular season, week 14. So we're going to talk about these games we have left. We have three games left on the schedule, two traditionally this time of the year and one makeup game. So we have football on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So if you like swag football, then you have a great opportunity to check out swag football for 3 straight days over the holiday weekend. And you can't beat that. That's about as good as it gets. So with that being said, man, we're gonna go ahead and jump into this. Our week 14 pick 'em. The link is on my Twitter account, which is Swag Talk 76. It's also on my Instagram and Facebook, which are both Swag Talk, and it will be in the description down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment, and share, and hit the notification bell so you can be alerted to any videos that I drop that are not on my typical schedule. Like today. Usually this video comes out on Wednesday, but it's obviously dropping on Tuesday because it's Thanksgiving and things get moved around a little bit. So um, hit that if you hit that notification bell already, then you knew this video was dropping. If not, then you need to hit it so you don't be surprised when these videos drop kind of off of schedule. So with that being said, man, we're gonna go ahead and jump directly into this, and we're gonna start with the Turkey Day Classic. Um, Alabama State and Tuskegee are facing off in this historical matchup. The Hornets coming off of a 9-6 victory over Prairie View. They are 9-5, 5-3 in conference, so they will finish the season no worse than a tie for second place in conference. Depending on what happens in our other game that takes place on Friday. So that's a very important game in terms of standings. It might not mean a lot to most people, but finishing number two, number three is a whole lot better than finishing lower than that. So this game obviously doesn't have any conference implications for Bama State, but it's a rivalry. It's the I think it's the 100th matchup, so it's a lot of history there, and there's still a lot of stakes. Tuskegee has been a thorn in Bama State side historically, but for recent years they've been able to kind of handle things. Tuskegee actually had just an overview. Tuskegee actually has a winning record in this series, 65-38 and four ties. Bama State is on a 4-game winning streak, so they've won. They've been pretty hot in this series in recent years. Um, Last season they won 41-3, so that was a big victory for them there. 43-9 was in 2021. 2019 they won 38-31, and then 2018 they won 26-20. Tuskegee did win four in a row. Um, Basically 2000. This is all over the place, but Tuskegee has had some wins in recent years, and this series has kind of bounced around, but now it's still a big game. Like I said, no matter how you slice it, it's still a big game. But Bama State's looking to close out the season strong. Tuskegee's looking for a winning record. They're 5-5 and 5-3 in the SIAC. So upset here would put them at 6-5, and they do have an FCS matchup on their schedule. They played Grambling earlier this season, and they dropped that game. So this is they lost again 37-20. They actually opened up their season with 3 straight losses, losing to Johnson C. Smith, Grambling, and Savannah State. Then they won 4 in a row. They won 5 in a row, beating Morehouse, beating Edward Waters, Morehouse, Lane, Kentucky State, and Central State before they lost their last 2 games against the 2 teams who played for the SIAC championship. Clark Atlanta, who they lost to 36-28, and Miles, who actually won the conference and then won their first round playoff game last week. They lost to Miles 37-7. So they've been a team that's beaten some of the teams below them and lost to some of the teams in front of them. And obviously, their only FCS matchup, they lost it by 17. So Um, let's just take a look at where the Golden Tigers, where they are in terms of statistically. This is a team that averaged 24.8 points per game. Defensively, they give up 21.8. They average 137 yards on the ground. They give up 113. So they've been a pretty strong team against the run, and they're going to be tested by that Bama State run offense. Um, through the air, they average 190 yards per game. They give up 233 through the air. They allow 17 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Offensively, they have 15 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, averaging 327 yards per game and 5.4 yards per play, giving up 346 and 5.9 yards per play. They complete 40% on third downs and 58% on fourth down. So they're very efficient. They turn the ball over 12 times as a whole. Defensively, they force 10 turnovers, and opponents convert 36% on third down and 35% on fourth down. They've allowed 21 sacks. They have 21 sacks, and they've allowed 15 sacks. So they've been pretty solid protecting the quarterback. Just some names of note to take a look at individually for this team. Damon Levitt, he has 330 yards to lead the team on the ground, 3 touchdowns, averaging 4.1 yards per carry. Johnny Morris also is right there with him at 286 with 4 touchdowns, averaging 3.7 yards per carry. And Ronaldo Selvey Jr., he has 250 yards on the season, 1 touchdown, averages 5 yards per carry. Reagan Bill is the leading passer. He's 101 of 182, 14 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, has 1,425 yards with a longer 91. So they do have some explosive plays in that offense, completing 55% of his passes. As a team at 54%. When he does go to the air, his top guy is Reggie Brigman. He has 35 catches for 495 yards and 2 touchdowns. He has that 91 yarder. Quavon Beckford has 21 catches for 488 yards and six touchdowns. He has a 63 yarder. He's averaging over 23 yards per catch. So he's a big play guy for them. Justin Stiff, 21 catches, 185 yards, no touchdowns. Their leading tackler is Charles Davis Jr. He has 64 tackles on the season. When you look at tackles for loss, Javon Miller has 9.5 tackles for loss. Also, Malik Moore has 9 tackles for loss. Miller and Moore are two of their top sack guys. Miller has 4 sacks. Moore has 3. Mays also has 3. The leading interceptor is Michael King Jr. He has 2 on the season. Quick look at special teams. They average 34 yards per punt, and they are 11 of 16 on the season on field goals. That's 68%. They have a long of 47. They're actually 2 of 4 from 40 plus. They're pretty solid inside 20 to 29 yards. They're 4 or 5 there. They're 3 or 5 from 30 to 39 yards, and they're 2 or 2 from inside 20 yards. So they are a pretty solid team in terms of kicking field goals. The return game, they average 10.2 yards per punt return, and they average 21.8 yards per kickoff return. They don't have any touchdowns on either return, either return unit. Bama State, obviously, defense is what this team is known for, allowing 17.6 points per game. That leads the conference. The offense has been up and down. They've been more down these last few weeks, scoring average 21.6 points per game, coming off of a 9-point game where they obviously didn't score any offensive touchdowns at any touchdowns, period. When you look at the offense, 297 yards per game on offense. Defense is first at 268.5 yards per game. Bama State is solid running the ball. They're at 171 yards per game. They have 12 touchdowns on the ground, and they average 4.4 yards per carry. The defense leads the conference with 103.4 yards per game allowed and 2.7 yards per carry, which also leads the conference. Their passing attack was actually for a few weeks in the middle of the season, the passing attack was actually pretty solid. It looked like they had turned the corner. They had a couple big passing games, but the last few weeks, their passing offense has kind of tailed off. They had 126 yards per game on the season, 53% completion rate. They have 10 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, 1,394 yards. Defensively, they're third against the pass at 165.1 yards per game. They also have allowed 11 touchdowns and they have 11 interceptions. Excuse me, they have 15 interceptions. That number actually leads the conference. So they've been a team that's been very opportunistic when the ball is in the air. And that just plays into how well his defense is. Um, the offense has only allowed 17 sacks on the season. Defensively, they lead the conference with 36 sacks. That's no surprise that, I mean, almost any number you look at this defense is top notch. It's no surprise. They forced 25 turnovers on the season. So they're very good there. Uh, Third down conversion rate offensively, they're at 31%. Again, that kind of goes into the fact that they are on their fifth string quarterback. So the consistency is just not going to be there. The defense, they're third in third down conversion rate at 31.8%. And fourth downs, they're 50% on offense, and the opponents convert 29%. So, all of this goes into basically saying Tuskegee is a heavy underdog coming into this game. There's no real way to, sugarcoat it. Bama State, I think they have to find their offense again, where this offense was in the middle of the season. They need to get back there. And I do think a game like this will be one of those games where they can put points on the board. They scored 40 plus against Tuskegee the last 2 years. And last year's offense was not good at all. So I do think with the running game that they have, I think that will help them a lot um, moving forward. And I think that defense is going to do what it does. I think that defense is going to cause a lot of issues for Tuskegee, and they'll get those takeaways, give the offense some short fields. They'll put up points. Um, I can even see a special teams touchdown in there, like they've gotten in recent matchups against Tuskegee. So I think Bama State wins this game. I'm going to give them another 40 plus. I'm going to say they win this game 45 to 7. I think they close out their season on a good mark, and they finish at 7-5. So that's a strong finish for a team that, even though they were picked first by the media to win the East, all those all that attrition at the quarterback position, um, didn't really set them back that much. They did have, the loss to Grambling, which was kind of a surprise. But the other two losses were two teams who are right there with them in the standings, and one of them is the undefeated East champ. So, they beat the team that they were supposed to for the most part, and they lost to the teams who were their challengers. So nothing really surprising there. And like I said, I think they win this game pretty solidly, and they move on. This game is a 1 o'clock kick. Can be seen on ES. I haven't seen any TV on the SWAC schedule, but it's a 1 o'clock kick. Next game is on Black Friday, a makeup game from earlier in the season. Alabama A&M and FAMU. They hook up. This game was actually supposed to be. Let's see if I can find where the game was supposed to be. I believe this game was scheduled for like September 28th or something like that. So the weather, they had a hurricane come through and cancel this game. So they rescheduled it to November 29th. And now, this game, it has some standings implications. Alabama A&M with a win can finish they can finish 7-5 overall and 5-3 in conference, which would put them tied with Bama State. They would finish third in that scenario because they lost to Bama State, but that's a great finish for a team who has been really up and down all year. FAMU, they could also finish 7-5, 4-3 if they win. I mean 5-3 if they win. Um, are they gonna finish 6-6 and 4-4? So the winner is gonna finish tied with Bama State. The loser will finish below that group. If FAMU wins, then they will finish second because they beat Bama State. If A&M wins, they'll finish third because they lost to Bama State. So there's still a lot of positive impact on this game. I mean, obviously not a conference championship game or a division championship game or anything like that, but you want to close out the season strong, and especially if you FAMU, what's been going on for you adversity wise the last few weeks. You really need this game because even though you won last week, you had a lot of problems with Bethune-Cookman, which is not a surprise because, like I said, Bethune-Cookman's last three games will have been by a total of 8 points. So they've been a tough out, but you want to kind of be able to make some things happen. Now, when you look at this matchup, A&M's offense is high flying, they're explosive. They score 31 points per game. FAMU, they're scoring 24.2 points per game. The defense of A&M, they give up 30 points per game, so they tend to have a lot of high scoring games on offense and defense. They can play shootouts. And FAMU gives up 27 points per game, which is not like where they normally are. So that makes season is kind of odd for them. Both teams are top three in offense. A&M leads the league at 454 yards per game. FAMU is third at 379. Defensively, both teams, again, kind of in the same range. FAMU is fifth at 350 yards per game, and A&M is seventh at 362 yards per game. So they're kind of in the same boat. Although one defense is maligned for those numbers, and the other defense is kind of looked at, okay for those numbers. And A&M's defense is not great. They're not as bad as they have been in recent years, but they still give up points, even though they're not that bad of a defense, but they give up points, and that makes things look pretty bad. Their offense is third in rushing at 193 yards per game, and they do have some weapons in that run game. Donovan Eaglin obviously is at 897 yards. He has a chance to go over 1,000 yards in this game with 103 yards. So, that's something to look forward to. He also has a chance to get 10 touchdowns or more if he scores one. So he has 897 yards, 5.4 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns. Xavier Langford, who's been in and out these last few weeks, although Quad Brown has played mostly the last few games, but Langford does have 325 yards and 7 touchdowns. Isaiah Nono has 237 yards and no touchdowns, averages 6.4 yards per carry. So really, a guy who can kind of, break one. He has a 65 yarder this season. And Ryan Morrow, 214 yards, 4.6 yards per carry with 1 touchdown. They're facing a FAMU run defense that's been much maligned all season, giving up 175 and a half yards per game. Opponents are averaging 4.7 yards per carry, and they have 20 touchdowns. Those 20 touchdowns are really a lot more than this team normally gives up. But I think A&M is a strong running team, and I think they're going to challenge this FAMU run defense. And FAMU, even though their rushing offense kind of spiked up the ranks this past week, they have 137 yards per game on the ground, but they ran for over 300 against Bethune, and that was something. The number was unexpected for me, but the fact that they had success running the ball wasn't because I've been saying all season. I think they have a really solid group of running backs. Thad Franklin, he leads the offense with 612 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns, averages 5.5 yards per carry. Bo Somerset has 423 yards on the season, 1 touchdown, 7.3 yards per carry. And Kelvin Dean, 408 yards on the season, 5 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. So all three of those guys average over 5 yards per carry. So they're very efficient, even though the numbers aren't there. Like I said, I always say I don't think FAMU's run game was not good because of lack of effort. Because they didn't really run the ball a lot, and they still are last in carries. So they just don't run the ball a lot, but they are very capable of doing it, and they average 4.5 yards per carry as a team. So this is a matchup of two teams that can run the ball. I think FAMU can run the ball. They've shown it. How much they continue to do that, that's a big key. Both teams are tops in passing. A&M's first at 260 per game. FAMU second at 242 per game. Both passing defenses are kind of, they're kind of, both passing defenses are kind of around, up and down. FAMU, their pass defense that allows 175 yards per game. And A&M's defense allows 221. So that plays into FAMU's hands. This is a matchup I really don't know. Um, I really don't know who has the edge because, like I said, both teams can throw the ball. Like the FAMU pass defense pretty solid. A&M's pass defense has been pretty porous, and so that could be the difference in this game. You know, if A&M can get hot passing the ball, and FAMU is when I say A&M can get hot running the ball, and then if their running game can kind of help that passing game out. I think the Rattlers playing at home, I think that gives them an edge. Um, I do think they have the edge at quarterback. Daniel Richardson, he's over 2,400 yards, had 2,469, so he'll go over 2,500 yards in this game, barring anything happening. He has 21 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. He has had that inexplicable interception from time to time. Langford too has been plagued by that. Quad Brown, who's been playing a lot more recently. Um, he hasn't had as many throws that are kind of make you shake your head. But I think he doesn't necessarily run as well as Langford. But Brown is at 1,460 yards on the season. He has 11 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Langford 125 and 7 touchdowns with six interceptions. Their top guy is Keenan Hambrick. He has 47 catches, 722 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Also, the Quadrant Welch has been strong recently. 23 catches, 337 yards, and 3 touchdowns. DJ Nelson, 23 catches, 256 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Donovan Wright's another guy who's been solid the last few weeks, 12 catches, 216 yards, and 2 touchdowns. FAMU's receiving core is very talented as well. Jamari Gassett, 51 catches, 719 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Cobb, 12 for 250. Quan Lee, 21 for 242. And they also have 3 tight ends that they can go to, and a guy like Goldie Lawrence, who has 18 catches for 220 yards and a touchdown. Um, I think a game like this, like I say, it really comes down to motivation. Like I said, this game doesn't necessarily have a lot behind it, and it's a game being played at a time that neither team typically plays. Most times their season is over, their regular season is over by the week before this. And with FAMU going to the SWAC championship game last year, they have been in the postseason. They went to playoffs a couple years ago, so they've been used to playing football after Thanksgiving. But this is kind of different. This is a conference game. I think with everything that's been going on adversity wise, I thought the Rattlers did a good job of kind of circling the wagons and finding a way by hook or by crook to win that Bethune game, because I think you just had to win it. No matter how you did it, I think you needed to win for confidence and just to kind of put some of that behind you. So um, I do like FAMU in this game. I feel like when A&M's on an even matchup, they don't necessarily play as well. Um, but this is a team that can score points, and they will give FAMU some problems. And I think this is going to be a game that's like mid to high 20s. Um, if long as FAMU stays out their own way, I think they're good in this game. I think both teams are going to move the ball up and down the field, but I think FAMU will score. Um, they'll score one more touchdown. I think they win the game 34 to 27. I think, like I said, I think it's going to be a high scoring game, but I think the Rattlers are going to win. It could be one of those games where both teams kind of come out, hot early, and then it settles in. But I do like the Rattlers in this game, and that takes us to our final game of the day and our final game of the regular season, Bayou Classic, Saturday, November 30th in New Orleans. Um, NBC 1 o'clock kickoff. Um, Two teams kind of going in different directions. Grambling season kind of started off pretty well. They had a 3-game winning streak and beating Tuskegee, beating Texas A&M Commerce, and beating Jackson State. And then conference play came, and they kind of tailed off a little bit. And now they're at 5-6, 2-5 in conference. And they really need a win, and not just because it's the Bayou Classic, but you want to, again, like the theme of the day is, you want to close out your season strong. You want to give yourself an opportunity to to win. Going out with a win, and what better way to go out with a win than to beat your arch rival? Even though you're not gonna keep them from going to the championship, there's nothing better than sending your rival into that game, with a loss. I mean that's something that you can hold over them for 365 days, regardless of whatever else happens with that team. You can always say, "Well, we were the one to knock y'all off," like so that's gonna be there. And just like I said, just the fact that you want to play a good game to close out the season. Um, Gramblin's been a team that's been kind of hamstrung by close games, and both teams are teams that have played close games. Grambling on one hand has not had a lot of success in those close games. When you look at it, they beat Texas and Commerce by 7 in overtime. They lost to Prairie View by 2 in overtime. They lost to Alcorn by 2. Um, they beat Tech Southern. They lost Tech Southern by 7. They lost to Bethune by 3. They beat Bama State by 1, and they lost to A&M by 5. So they've had a lot of close games, and they've been on the other side of them. Southern also is a team that they're 6-1 in conference, 7-4 overall, so they can finish 8-4 and go into the championship game at 7-1. There's still a lot on the line for Southern as well. Again, bragging rights, and the fact that this is a team who hasn't necessarily played a lot of good football games all season. Probably the Pine Bluff game is probably the best game they played against an FCS opponent all year. Before that I said Alabama A&M, but this game they were pretty. Other than like a kind of shaky first quarter, offensively they played a pretty solid game against Pine Bluff and got the win. That was the most comfortable win all season. Again, just like Grambling, Southern's been in a lot of close games. The only difference is Southern's won those games against Prairie View in overtime, against Texas Southern overtime. Um, a 5-point victory over Alabama A&M, a 5 overtime victory over Bethune Cookman. So all their wins, other than and Pine Bluff and other than Pine Bluff and Alcorn, their wins have been close. And so they've been, like I said, they've been on the opposite end of Grambling. Grambling's been coming up short in those close games, and Southern's been coming up on top in those close games. And that obviously most likely would lead to another close game. I mean, the Bayou Classic has been close the last few years. Grambling won in 21 on a field goal last second. Southern um, scored a couple fourth quarter touchdowns on defense to win in 22. And then last season, Southern basically held off Grambling to win a close game. So I don't anticipate this being anything other than that. Um, Grambling offensively, they scored 25 points per game. Southern scores 21 points per game. And again, Southern's issue most of the season has been offensive consistency. Grambling as well. So both teams are honestly kind of looking to find themselves offensively. Both teams are right there within each other on scoring defense. Southern allows 22.5 points per game. Grambling is at 25. Total offense, Southern averages 365 yards per game. They have 27 touchdowns, and they average 5.3 yards per play. Grambling has 294 yards per game. They have 29 touchdowns, and they average 4.7 yards per play. Total defense, Southern allows 306 yards per game. Grambling gives up 375. They've allowed 31 touchdowns. Southern's allowed 28. Grambling's opponents 5.6 yards per play. Southern 4.9. I like Grambling as a team that can run the ball. I think they have a lot of good backs that can carry the load for them. Um, they just haven't really had that breakout game. And the last couple of years, Grambling has run the ball extremely well in the Bayou Classic. And really, they probably should have won both of those games because their run game was so strong, but other factors played into them losing those games. This team only averages 117 yards per game on the ground, 3.4 yards per carry. But there's a lot of talent in that backfield. Catravion Hargrove, he has 430 yards and 4 touchdowns. He averages 4.6 yards per carry. Trey Bradford, 407. He averages 4 yards per carry. He has 5 touchdowns. Dedrick Talbot has 198 yards, 4 touchdowns. He averages 4.2 yards per carry. And Keelan Elder has come on the last couple of weeks. He has 30 carries, 167 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He averages 5.6 yards per carry. So all their primary ball carriers average over 4 yards per carry. So that's a very talented group of guys. They just haven't really been able to consistently run the ball this season, and that's been one of the reasons why this team has kind of had some problems. Um, and they also haven't really run it a lot. They have a 375 carries, which is 10th in the league. So they haven't really run the ball a lot, but they're more than capable of doing it. And I would not be surprised to see them run the ball more in this game. Southern's run defense is middle of the pack. Gramblin's run defense is basically similar. They both allow over 140 yards. Grambling at 141, Southern at 145. Southern's run game has been better as the season's gone on, and they've moved up from being a 10th, ninth, to 10th ranked offense on the ground to fifth at 153 yards per game. And they also have a stable of guys that can carry the ball. Kobe Dillon has 679 yards. He got his first touchdown against Pine Bluff. He averages 4.8 yards per carry. Kendrick Grimes is more the home run hitter guy. Although he doesn't have the longest run on the season, but he's a guy who can break that big touchdown run. He has 504 yards, averages 4.5 yards per carry and 6 touchdowns. And C.J. Russell, who came over from Grambling a couple years ago, he has 301 yards on the season and 5 yards per carry with 3 touchdowns. So all three of those guys are very capable. Last game against Bethune-Cookman, they all had between 12 and 14 carries, and they all had like between 62 and 66 yards. So they all were, that was probably the most balanced game that they had. Typically, one guy will be the guy that gets, the bulk of the yardage. That week, they all chipped in. So, I think both of these teams are gonna want to run the football. Southern definitely wants to run the football. They're a run heavy team. They have they run a lot, but when you look at the numbers compared to a lot of other teams, they don't really run that much. But they do want to run the ball. They have 412 carries on the season, so they do want to run the ball, and that's been their MO the last few weeks. But they also are a team that will put the ball in the air. They have 343 pass attempts, which is fifth in the league. So they will put the ball in the air. Consistency at quarterback has been the downfall of this offense for the most part. But this offense still has 212 yards per game, 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. So when they've been able to throw the ball, they've been very successful. The young quarterbacks, T-Set and Woods, have both had big games passing the ball. Who starts at quarterback is going to be, interesting. Does Woods get the second start coming off of a big game against Pine Bluff, and a big relief game against Bethune, or does T-Set get that job back at the practice? But I think either one of those guys gives Southern a good chance to win. Groundless passing offense has not really been that efficient. They're 177 yards per game. They have 11 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Southern has 14 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Southern's defense is first in the league at 161 yards per game through the air. They've allowed 11 touchdowns, which are the fewest in the league. But they only have 4 interceptions, which is also the fewest in the league. And Southern's dropped more interceptions than I can even count. And that's been, even that hasn't necessarily bit them. I mean, in their losses, maybe the games would have been closer if they didn't drop some of those interceptions, but they've been able to withstand that. Grambling's defense is last against the pass, 234 yards per game, but they do have 14 interceptions, which is second in the league. So Grambling has been really reliant on turnovers, and Southern's a team who has been prone to turnovers. So that's something that could keep Grambling in this game. If you're Grambling, you definitely want to. Whoever the quarterback is, you want to make him uncomfortable. You want to force him to make some bad throws. Woods did have a bad interception against Pine Bluff last week. And they've all had those bad throws. Grambling is capable of getting those interceptions and turning them into touchdowns. So that could be the equalizer in this game. Now, Miles Crawley came into the season as the preseason offensive player of the year. Hasn't really had that kind of season. Missed a couple games because of injury as well. Came back in their last game and didn't necessarily look that good. He was kind of still banged up. Just didn't really really looked great coming off of a off week. Maybe he looks a little bit better. If he starts, if the offense is gonna generate anything through the air, I think he's the guy that you want to do it. He has 1,564 yards, 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Javon Robinson is his top target. 41 catches, 501 yards, and 1 touchdown. Um, so that's the guy who can make this offense go. He's also a guy who can be a threat in the return game. He has a punt return for a touchdown of 72 yards. Um, he's also a guy who has a 38-yard kickoff return. So, he's an all-purpose weapon, and Southern's gonna have to know where he's at all times. Um, so, like I said, depending on who's playing quarterback at Southern, Dupree Fuller is the one of the top targets at tight end. He has 28 catches, 329 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Also, Darren Morris, 29 catches, 46 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Chandler Whitfield came back from injury a couple of weeks ago. He has 18 catches for 265 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also, they have some young receivers who've been making some plays here and there, but also have some drops here and there. But I think Gramblin's ability to force turnovers is gonna keep this defense in the game. And Gramblin's tough against the run, so that if they can make Southern throw the ball, then that's gonna definitely kind of play into their hands a little bit. Andrew Jones leads the defense with 112 tackles. He's the top tackler by far. He also leads the team in tackles for loss with 17. Um, Bryce Cage leads the defense with 4 sacks. And Brendan Barley has 3 interceptions to lead the defense. Like I said, Southern defensively doesn't really force a lot of turnovers, but they've been getting more as the season goes on. Vince Page leads the defense with 80s. Well, I mean, with 66 tackles. He has 7.5 tackles for loss. Kelby Gibbons leads the defense with 24.5 tackles for loss. He also has 9 sacks on the season, which also leads the defense. He's a guy, if you're Grambling, you're definitely going to want to know where he is at all times. He's a guy that even if he doesn't necessarily get the sack, you have to account for where he is, and he can help other guys get free. Grambling's offensive line allows 22 sacks, but they've given up a lot of quarterback hits during the season, so that could be something to kind of keep a lookout on. Southern defense allows 18 sacks. This offensive line has been much improved all season, and I think they've been playing pretty well as the season went on. Southern is third in the league with 27 sacks, and Grambling is not that far behind at 22. So both defenses can get pressure, and like I said, Grambling's ability to force turnovers, which, like I said, they have 14 interceptions and 11 fumble recoveries, so they have 25 takeaways on the season. Um, that gives them an edge in this game, but um, I think coming in, playing loose, playing spoiler, Grambling does have that edge there. And I don't look at it too much other than that. I'm not really making too much about Coach Dooley and Coach Rollins and some of those other guys facing off against Southern. But Southern's gonna have to do something that they haven't done all season, and that's start fast. You cannot struggle in this game. You can't come out, looking at this game like, oh, it's just a bump in the road until the Spike Championship. You got that in your pocket. You're gonna have to come out and play with fire because Maryland's gonna come out and play with fire. And I think because of that, and the fact that Southern hasn't necessarily started fast all season, that's gonna make this game be a close game, and both teams have played close games. But like I say, Southern, whether it's the chicken foot or the horseshoe or 4-leaf clover or whatever it is, I think it lives another week. They're not gonna, that's not gonna carry them much farther than this week. But I think this is gonna be another one of those close games. I think it's gonna be another game that's like 20, like the mid-20s. So I think Southern wins the game 26-24. I don't think there's ever been an overtime game in the Bayou Classic. I could be wrong, but I don't remember one. So I'm going to say this is going to be the first overtime game in the Bayou Classic. I think Southern wins this game 26-24 or something like that. It's going to come down to the 2-point conversions. I just think it's going to be one of them 3-4 overtime games. I could be very wrong, but, I think the way both these teams play close games and the way Southern is always in overtime, I don't see the last game of the regular season being anything different. And both teams are going to come out and battle. And Grambling is going to show that this team was not necessarily what their record was. I think this is you're probably going to get Gramblin's best effort by far this season. I don't think they're going to want to go out looking poor. So I think they're going to come out and really give it to Southern. But I think Southern's overtime mojo. I think it takes them one more week of success, and they win this game. Like I said, 26-24. And that's going to do it for this final week preview of the regular season. Now we will be back on Sunday to recap these games, and we'll have Swag Smoke tomorrow, 6 p.m. since 7 p.m. Eastern. If everybody can be there. Otherwise, it'd probably be me. But we definitely gonna have Swag Smoke on Wednesday instead of Thursday because of Thanksgiving. And other than that, man, I don't have anything else. So this has been a crazy regular season, and this is the final week of it. And this is the last preview of it. There's been a lot of fun to do these. And so, we're looking forward to, the postseason. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC. See well signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.